our ability of our immune system to identify them and rid them and basically kill them through apoptosis becomes less and less effective. And we go from 20 to 30 and say, well, okay, that was 10 years. I aged a little bit. 30 to 40, we seem to increase that
Yeah.
aging process. It accelerates. And it is because these senescent cells are building up in our body till we get to an elderly population where we're in our older or our later years. And we have so many senescent cells, we have so much inflammation that our quality of life really starts to deteriorate. And those senescent cells really start to increase about after age 60, where our immune system starts to falter and the senescent cell numbers start to increase.
Welcome to the Peptides and Longevity podcast. Each week, we'll dive into groundbreaking science, innovative therapies, and the future of health and longevity. Alongside visionary physicians and experts, we'll explore how peptides, cutting-edge medicine, and lifestyle strategies can redefine the way we age. Get ready to transform your health, optimize your vitality, and unlock the secrets to a longer, healthier life. Let's get started.
Hello, this is Dr. Kent Holtorf with another episode of the Peptide Summit. Today we are honored to have Dr. Joseph Cleaver, who is going to be talking about senolytics, the cornerstone of longevity. Thank you, Joe, for being on. Appreciate it. You're one of the busiest doctors I know, and you're all over the country. Where do we have you now? You're in North Carolina, I think.
Yes, sir.
And you practice Dallas, and you're winery in Sonoma, where we went to conference mastermind too. It was great. But a little about Joe. It's such an honor to have him. He's a fellow of the American Board of Anti-Aging Regenerative Medicine. In addition, he's board certification in internal medicine. He's board certified in anti-aging and regenerative medicine, has achieved certification by the ABAARM. So he has a lot of initials after his name. An advanced metabolic endocrinology, specializing in bioidentical hormone therapy. He sees patients at Paradigm Wellness Medical Group. He's in Dallas, Sonoma, but also looks like North Carolina. And I had the honor to be invited to one of his masterminds at his winery, Luconda. Great wines, by the way. I don't know if there's any spots for the wine club, but we're similar. He does successful wine. I started a beer company after medical school. We had a hangover-free beer, blind placebo-controlled studies, but as soon as we brought it out, the Bureau of Tobacco and Firearms said you can't make a healthy beer. So we got shut down. But then we came with an energy beer before anyone had it. But our business plan was not very good. It cost us $7 to make it. And at that time, you couldn't sell a six-pack for more than 5. So we tried to make it up in volume. I'm a doctor. I don't know these finances. And it didn't work. We kept losing money. But it was a fun experience. He's the real deal. Patients come from all over the world to see him. He is so generous with his knowledge. He trains doctors from everywhere. He does a lot of aesthetics with threads and a plasma pen, which scares me. It's hotter than the surface of the sun, but in his hands, he can work wonders. And it's really neat. So I've been to a couple of his masterminds, conferences at his winery, which is a beautiful setting in Sonoma, that it's just some amazing minds on peptides, on longevity, senolytics coming together. And it was just a wonderful experience of like-minded physicians that, they're geeky on one end. Joe's Mr. Suave, good-looking guy, but he's also a geek. You can tell he just researches like crazy. He's on the cutting edge of everything. And again, everything from cosmetics to the sickest person but it seems like his passion is really having people live better, longer. And he has a whole new way of looking at this longevity. We hear longevity, take this, take that, which really goes after getting rid of your cells that are causing the problem. So thanks, Joe. Thanks for being with us. It's an honor. And I just learn so much every time we get together.
Well, thank you for that wonderful introduction. It's an honor to be here. and to be able to share just some knowledge and education with my colleagues and peers. And just thank you for inviting me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Yeah, so senolytics versus longevity. It's kind of like, okay, everyone wants to live longer, but one, how do you achieve that? Or is that kind of the goal? Or how do you achieve that? What's so important about senolytics and what is it, I guess?
Yeah. The uh, when as we've developed to what used to be called anti-aging, and we think about the largest educational institution outside of medical schools and looking for integrative medicine programs, the American Academy of Anti-Aging Medicine coined that term decades ago. And we've used anti-aging for a lot of years, and that anti-aging foundation and the fundamentals of our endeavors to slow the aging process started and still are true today with lifestyle, the purest form of medicine. It really is. If we can prevent disease and live a longer life, that's where I really kind of cut my professional teeth, if you will, at the Cooper Clinic in Dallas, Texas. But back in the '90s, we looked at. We have the largest. I worked on the database there for a lot of years, and we look at the impact of lifestyle on longevity and the mortality data. All-cause mortality data is compelling. It's all the evidence is there if we live a healthy, balanced lifestyle.
Hey, but I want, instead of lifestyle, I want the pill. We got peptides that makes your body think it's exercising, makes your body think it's fasting. So
we've made a lot of advancements in integrative and regenerative medicine that apply to longevity medicine. So we've coined the term longevity medicine, and the underpinnings of the mechanisms of improving health span and lifespan. When we drill down deep into the literature and the science of where we used to focus on, we have to control inflammation. We still know that. We have to control that low-grade inflammation and oxidative stress. And we were taking all these antioxidants, and there's still a very important role for it. But first of all, lifestyle creates some of that low-grade inflammation. Some of our genetics creates the low-grade inflammation. What we, certainly what eat every day creates low-grade inflammation, stress, et cetera. And so we would try to balance those things out with supplements, et cetera. Well, we've become a lot more sophisticated because we know one of the most important end results and important drivers of premature aging is something called a senescent cell. And that senescent cell is produced in greater quantities from healthy stem cells, healthy cells in the body, if we do those things wrong on a daily basis in lifestyle. And we don't pay attention to this low-grade inflammation everybody talks about. And we start getting genetic or DNA damage in our cells that accelerate the number and speed at which we create.
Can you go back and what is a senescent cell?
So a senescent cell is a cell that is at the end of its lifespan in the human body. It's no longer functioning, and every system in our body has, first of all, healthy stem cells that reproduce skin cells, epithelial skin cells, so we don't get wrinkles. In our heart, so we don't get heart disease or heart failure. Our lungs, our brains, so we don't get Alzheimer's, et cetera. And as we age, our ability to maintain those stem cells, they also age. Over time, a healthy stem cell turns into that senescent cell, and it gets stuck in a state of suspended animation, if you will. It's one of the ways the human body prevents that cell from becoming a cancer cell. So in one of the phases, G0 of the life cycle or the cell cycle, it gets stuck. Normally, a good, healthy immune system can destroy that stem cell through apoptosis and autophagy.
How does it take in general for a stem cell to become a senescent cell?
So the literature supports about a 22-day cycle.
That's it.
Yeah. That's it. And so about every 22 days, we see this migration of, stem cells, healthy cells morphing into these senescent cells. And as we get older, as we go throughout the decades of life, our ability of our immune system to identify them and rid them and basically kill them through apoptosis becomes less and less effective. So look at ourselves we go from 20 to 30 and say, well, okay, that was 10 years. I aged a little bit. 30 to 40, we seem to increase that aging process. It accelerates. And it is because these senescent cells are building up in our body till we get to an elderly population where we're in our older or our later years. And we have so many senescent cells, we have so much inflammation that our quality of life really starts to deteriorate. And those senescent cells really start to increase about after age 60, where our immune system starts to falter and the senescent cell numbers start to increase.
So the senescent cells, when they switch to senescent cells, they're not just sitting there, they're actually causing problems.
So true. What happens is every system in our body has stem cells, and it has a ratio of healthy stem cells to senescent cells. And those senescent cells become eventually, the worst case scenario is they become SASP cells, and they're secretory phenotypes. In other words, they turn into basically a factory that produces inflammatory substances that also pollute the milieu in the environment around these healthy stem cells and start recruiting those stem cells to become more and more unhealthy and convert to senescent cells.
Vicious cycle.
Accelerate the aging process.
So everything's a vicious cycle.
It becomes a vicious cycle if we don't know how to target them, those senescent cells, and to prevent them from becoming senescent. And then if we have them, understanding the science as we know today, and we're just still scratching the surface, but we do have tools at our fingertips to be able to prevent senescent cells from occurring. And then if we do have them, we understand ways to actually rid them from the body. And that is, for me, my focus of approach to my therapies, with my senolytic therapies, my longevity therapies for my patients today in 2020. That's the most current literature and science that I know that has a significant impact on our endeavors to improve our longevity and our health span also.
See, I love that because, you have, this is good for you, this is good for the cells, but you don't want to be feeding these senescent cells. You want to get rid of them. So all your protocols, it depends on the order of things, right? You don't just say, oh, this is good for you, take it. No, you got to do this first, this second, this third. Can you talk about the timing of your protocols?
Well, if we look at and understand that we have a group of senescent cells in the body, we have a group of healthy stem cells, and if we try to nourish or feed or improve the health of a healthy stem cell, the same mechanisms that are improving the health of a healthy cell actually improve a cell we don't want to improve their function. Now, we can take a senescent cell and pull it back from occasion. We can pull it back from that senescence and make it healthy again. But more often than not, it's that last step on the pathway of senescent cells, that SASP cell, that we do not want to promote its health, because we do not want that cell to become more efficient in producing inflammatory substances that accelerate the aging process.
Yeah, it seems like you're taking a step so-called forward, but you're causing a cell that's causing problems to live longer, and you may be better for a bit, but it's gonna be one of the ones first to go back to senescence. So yeah.
And that's rare. So the most important concept that I explain to my patients that I understand from the literature and research, which quite frankly been around a long time, senolytics that is in the literature for decades. It's just coming to the fore now, and understanding that this is one of the most powerful imbalances. This is one of the most powerful concepts that have been identified in the human body that have been linked to premature aging. And that premature aging begets diseases of aging, diabetes. There's no shortage of that. Heart disease, Alzheimer's, dementia, etc.
Yeah, it's like, with diabetic patients, and if people do like stem cells, like bone marrow or fat, you find they don't work, right? Because you just got these crappy stem cells that are senescent. You're just basically giving them more than that. And what's interesting is that there's a lot of research on this. One is, and again, I don't want to be doctor bashing, but how many doctors, even you go to your standard doctor, knows about senescence, and senolytics, or do they care? I mean, they're in a model that if they did care, they'd be miserable, because they're gonna have to take 20 minutes to explain it. No, that's twice their time they have. And it's interesting. And like everyone looks for new research, but you may find this as well. You look back, especially on peptides, there's people go, oh my God, how do I not know about these hundreds of studies? Well, they've been around for 50 years, and it's just gets overlooked because there's no drug rep tapping on their door 3 times a day trying to get them to buy a drug. And so it's really the old literature. And I really think you could go back and look at the old literature in any specialty, except for surgery or something like that, for 2 months and be better than the specialist. They're just doing the same thing they've been doing in residency. And because that's what they need to do. Where you are on the cutting edge, and it's amazing, you're finding new stuff, but it may be old research that was done, but fascinating stuff, fascinating. And this whole senolytics is kind of blowing a hole and everything. Oh, take this, is good for you, good for you, good for you. Well, at what time, do you want to feed these sick cells and make them better at making you sick,
Right. Well said. And that's what I've termed now is more precision senolytics. When the fact that we have to, if we look at anything from a natural occurring substance in Mother Nature, whether it be a flavonoid such as quercetin or fisetin or long pepper, that all these substances actually are very powerful senolytics, and they can prevent healthy stem cells from becoming, they can prevent senescent cells. And they also, in addition, can actually induce apoptosis of a senescent cell and get rid of them. So that's where diet comes in. And then there's supplements that actually can enhance that. The science shows, and that's all I base my therapeutics on the literature and take clues from many decades of not forgotten, but there's so much literature out there that we have to go back and actually revisit some of the very powerful science that has been forgotten, such as even in peptides. Peptides are very powerful in senolytics and in many areas of application of regenerative and integrative medicine.
Oh, yeah. Now, wait a minute. You're an anti-aging doctor. You're not supposed to look at the literature.
So much, yeah, and so much of that literature, so much of the science, so much of the basic science and those mechanisms of action and the science supports the clinical application in many ways. Anecdotally, there's so much science that supports how we approach longevity.
And it's interesting. And again, I don't kind of get on soapbox with the whole healthcare machine, but it's like you get the less the doctor knows, the more adamant the right. Like, okay, that's wrong. Okay, well, how much have they read? And I'm like, I read more in a day than they do in a year, and I'm sure you're the same. And that's what you got to do. And it takes a long time. And it used to be, I remember going to the library and picking out the journal and then going to the damn fax machine and then the other journal's not there, whatever. Now it's information overload, right? It's so much stuff coming at you with 80% of it is just, whatever, just political stuff.
And so much is hitting that really the consumer, the layperson, the person and your patient who will, contact you and talk to you through, my patient satisfaction is, and my patients, for example, in Dallas are word of mouth. I do no advertising. I just do my best and follow my passion, taking care of my patients. They will come in with so much literature, so many ideas that they see on online. And I feel that one of the most important jobs that we do as integrative medicine physicians is to be the gatekeeper for them. We have to be able to wade through all the potentially dangerous things that they find that they want to try and find them the most effective, safest, and cost-effective therapies for them. Right?
Yeah, and
that's our responsibility.
And I agree. I tell patients, go to the internet, get all the stuff. There's great information. There's misinformation. Bring it in. We'll talk about it. So many doctors that I hear, they go, are you the doctor now? No, you have to be an active participant in your health now. And if a doctor tells you stop reading the internet, run, because they can't support their therapies. I think it's great. And I get patients bringing in obscure journals. Hey, look at this. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Well, Yeah, well, and there is so much great information that is just bypassed because there's not a patent on it, there's no drug rep, and and that's where all the excitement is. And I'm telling you, the excitement's in this. And I hate the term anti-aging or alternative. I hate that even more, because they go, oh, there's no evidence. Like, are you kidding me? I'm very evidence based. I've always been, but I was told never go to this alternative, and I went, and I'm like, oh my God, they're more evidence based than and a lot of doctors rely on societal recommendations, and you look at levels of evidence. So you got your double-blind, placebo-controlled study, you got your meta-analysis, you got your single-blind, and you got case studies, anecdotal, and then below that are societal recommendations. And why is that? They've shown to be wrong such a high percent of the time because they don't change for 20 years. They're very biased. They're looking at one side, and they're terrible. But what do doctors quote? The American Academy or the Endocrine Society says go by the TSH. Okay, well I got one patient that says it's not true. That's better evidence than the societal guidelines. So
You know, all physicians, I think, as a profession collectively, are some of the most dedicated professionals on this earth, and we're all just trying to do a good job. Just that our toolbox and our tools may be a little bit different, and our thought processes, the way we approach patients may be a little bit different. And our depth of knowledge and our understanding, we're just trying to do the best for them. I just know that I'm held to get up at 4 a.m. in the morning and comb through. I know what you do. I could text you 4 a.m. and find out, what are you looking at on PubMed, right?
if I'm still up, I can't get up early. But you see, there's no incentive for these doctors because they're in a system that they could find a cure to cancer. They can't do it. So why should they find these things? And so I get mad at the doctors, but I used to be kind of just so angry, but they're in an untenable situation. If they want to, they're going to make themselves more miserable,
Yeah. No, and I, so true. Well said. And I think that balance that is even more finely honed in longevity medicine and senolytics is the fact that as I mentioned before, there's a lot of science out there, but we are just getting an early understanding, just scratching the surface on longevity and how we can improve our, just our quality of life. But it's more fine tuned because we don't have the luxury of waiting, a whole lifetime to see how well our approaches work. We know that, short term, the same parameters that we use in longevity to certainly improve lifestyle. Hormone balancing, if we take a closer look at balancing hormones in men and women, there's literature out there that does support that, the humans do live longer when you do balance sex hormones. And then when you dig a little bit deeper into basic science, you see that hormone balancing has a direct effect, for example, on mitochondrial health and function and efficiency. It's like, wow, okay, yeah, you can define hormone balancing as a longevity approach.
Yeah, and you look at, the doctors will say, oh, don't take hormones that cause cancer. Well, yeah, synthetic hormones do. If you want to give a woman breast cancer, give her synthetic progestin. If you want to prevent breast cancer, give her progesterone. And, and would you say most of the things work epigenetically? Change that gene expression?
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of unknown epigenetic phenomenon occurring in all our therapies that haven't been discovered. When I give one of my talks on presentations on longevity and peptides, and I love referring to the GHKCU or copper peptide because the Broad Institute at Harvard has over 4,000 studies looking at the impact that copper peptide has on genetic expression and resetting your human genome to a reset, a healthier set, and down-regulating cancer genes, up-regulating anti-cancer genes. It have the impact it has on misfolded proteins and making a cell healthier. There's so much literature on a peptide that is, I think, overlooked in senolytics, and I use a lot of it in my programs, just as a just to improve skin health.
And so, yeah, GHK, and for everyone out there, it's a copper peptide, a tripeptide. You'll see it a lot for skin. It's a little blue, or it should be. Now, are you giving it as an injection?
I do. I use it systemically and topically.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. It's doing the same thing and really anti-aging the whole body, or do you want, just the skin? And can you talk about like the so-called theories of aging and how senolytics fits into that?
Well, the end result of the theories of aging, where we're looking at DNA damage, the end result is a senescent cell. Can, just as we mentioned, copper peptide can actually reverse some of that damage. Telomerase activator actually can go into the mitochondria and help reverse some of the mitochondrial DNA damage. Fundamentally, every day, our DNA is being scarred hundreds of thousands of times. I mean, depending on what literature you refer to, our collective DNA damage results in essentially our demise, and how we protect our DNA and how we maintain and manage our senescent cells. Because remember, those senescent cells I mentioned, that all the inflammatory substances that are produced go back and in the environment, in that stem cell environment, cause DNA damage and accelerate other cells to become senescent. So it's that vicious cycle you were referring to before. So protecting DNA in an environment such as we have with pesticides and UV radiation, and radiation in this world is one of the fundamental reasons why we age.
Yeah, I think we're in a more toxic environment than we've ever been. I mean, it's pesticides, plastics, pollutants, the EMFs, all this stuff.
Pandemics, stress.
Oh, and stress is a killer. And it's interesting, all the theories of aging, you got your, free radical, but they do all kind of come down to, they argue over all these things, but wait a minute, it's all about the senescent cell. Like, they're arguing over here, but the common denominator is over here.
Yeah. And that term coined, inflammaging, is really the result of all those insults we were talking about. And that's a term in the literature that has been used for many, many years, and is adopted by many physicians in integrative medicine that talk about inflammaging. And because we want to prevent disease, we need to address inflammation, because that inflammation is linked to those diseases of aging, which they're everywhere. They are pandemics: diabetes, heart disease, et cetera, and cancer.
Yeah. And it's all about inflammation. And you look at like diabetes, inflammation, hypothalamus causes diabetes. You get insulin or leptin resistance. The receptors are inflamed. They don't see the leptin and the insulin, and you lower that, and lo and behold, they're better. Interesting. What types of things how do peptides play a role in this, and the order of things? How does that work?
Well, certainly if I start with, because I'm really not going to get into, there's some very exotic peptides that are cell-penetrating peptides that get into the DNA and the nucleus and can reprogram cells to become healthier, can target senescent cells through various mechanisms in the body, such as P53, and induce apoptosis. But if we want to swing back the other end of the spectrum in terms of prevention, we always falls on a healthy immune system. One of the major reasons why we develop cancers and our demise later in life is the fact that our immune system starts to falter. And the thymic peptides are integral in maintaining immune vigilance and preventing immune senescence. And you can certainly, there's supporting evidence and science that shows that synergistically, if we restore thymic peptides to a more youthful level, that our immune system becomes more vigilant and can see a cancer cell starting in the body, for example, and be able to identify it and eliminate it. So those are some of the most important peptides. And I think in the senolytic space and the longevity space are the thymic peptides.
Yeah, and it's interesting. And looking at studies, and you look at, this is what I hear all the time, but say someone gets metastatic colon cancer, and then they go, "Oh, you're cured," and I'm like, don't tell them this, but in 6 years, it's going to come back. A cure is 5 years, right? So, and what they have found is after chemo, your chance of relapse is totally dependent and directly dependent on the level of your immune system. For instance, natural killer cells, monitoring your body for cancer. So the chemo wiped that out, and now you don't have anything monitoring. So of course it's going to come back.
Right.
And you have a bunch of senescent cells that they could be there, which are showing even like with chronic fatigue syndrome. They found that 25% have low natural killer cell number. Okay, they're there, most of them are there, but 75% have low natural killer cell function. So it doesn't work. The cells are just dysfunctional, and it's amazing that that's not addressed, but it's key again, that immune system.
Well, and that's I agree. And that is one of the key components on the prevention side, is to prevent senescent cells from developing and identifying and destroying them. So it's one of the fundamental cornerstones of longevity of medicine and longevity therapeutics. The overview of senolytics draws on so many areas of therapy that are really quite different. I mean, as I mentioned before, there's some very natural therapies and very powerful senolytics. There are mitochondrial peptides. We get into peptides. We talked about thymic peptides, but there are mitochondrial peptides, which I don't use a lot of. And if I do, I use them after I've wiped out those senescent cell population in the body and think about how do I want to optimize mitochondria. Mitochondria, we talked about theories of aging before. We talked about DNA. And DNA and mitochondrial function are the fundamental underpinnings of a healthy stem cell and longevity. So you connect the dots every single time, from lifestyle, exercise, optimizing mitochondria. Certain things we eat in our diet are helpful to mitochondria. Then we move into nutraceuticals that help improve mitochondrial efficiency, whether it be ALA, resveratrol, and activating SIRT1, et cetera, optimize mitochondrial function. Then we get into mitochondrial peptides. Like, I don't use, the literature says supports the function of certain peptides that improve mitochondrial function. So you can even look at telomerase activator. Telomerase activator, it lengthens telomeres, but when you look at the non-canonical functions of telomerase activator, it has the ability also, we were talking about GHK-CU before, but it has the ability to impact mitochondrial DNA and repair mitochondrial DNA. And that's one of the reasons why telomerase activator is extremely important. I think telomere length is a surrogate marker of stem cell health and longevity. But if you have very long telomeres, doesn't mean you're going to live the equivalent of, my telomeres are twice what they should be, and I'm a 15-year-old, I'm not going to live another 100 years. But it is a great marker of, I think, mitochondrial health and mitochondrial DNA health. And how far that gets you in terms of longevity, no one knows. But the fact that is, when we improve mitochondrial DNA, mitochondrial efficiency, it actually has a positive feedback back to telomere health and healthy telomere ends on our DNA that help also to promote longevity or contribute to our ability to live longer, or potential to live longer, I should say.
I got you. And the mitochondria, we're taught in medical school, and that, the mitochondria just for energy. But a sick mitochondria, they do so much more. They sense danger, they go to danger response, and they start pumping out, basically, all this oxidation and sickness. So, yeah, you're better off getting rid of that cell than, trying to save it. Can you just mention real quick, like, what is a telomere?
Well, telomeres are the end caps on our DNA, and they are identified or measured in units. And let's say we assign, when we're first born, our telomeres are 10 units long. And each time a cell reproduces, we have to, read our DNA, and when that happens, our telomeres and our end caps become slightly damaged. And the amount of telomerase we have in our body, which we have more early on in life, has the ability to go in uh, or into that telomere and help heal that injury. So it doesn't shorten. Each time the cell reproduces itself, the telomere shortens a little bit. And it's kind of like it's a clock of aging. And when that
It is
cell,
every time they replicate, short and
well, that's right. Each replication, the telomere shortens, and when we reach 3 units, that cell can no longer replicate, and in essentially we've reached the end of our lifespan.
Now, does that cell just sit there until there's a signal to die, or is it still functioning? Or the fact that it can't replicate, does it automatically go to apoptosis? Does it die? Or
I think there's a parallel between the two. There are cells that will reach senescence earlier on because of DNA damage, but your telomeres may not be as short as cell death. In other words, that cell is still viable, it's still alive, but when it converts to a senescent cell and the body can't, it becomes very resistant to death actually. So it's still a cell that's living, but it's not contributing to the health of tissue any longer. It's a detriment, and we have to get rid of it. And it doesn't necessarily mean that telomeres have reached those 3 unit lengths and actually done.
so it's not the defining thing, as you were saying, but it's a marker. It correlates with everything. I mean, I'm just saying there's so many things that I think in theories of age, there's so many things they're all taking little parts of it. What do you like to do to, I guess, get rid of these senescent cells first before you use your quote unquote longevity therapy?
To rid the body of senescent cells, one of the most powerful things we can do is intermittent fasting. We basically starve out a senescent cell. If we create protocols that integrate intermittent fasting periodically throughout a calendar year, for example, we can maintain a lower level of senescent cells because we basically starve them out. And I add the various senolytics to, for example, an intermittent fasting program and an exercise program and all things we can repeat over and over again. That is one of the most potent ways and most powerful ways to clean up senescent cells in the body.
It's only done 2 hours once. Does that work?
So interesting comment. So, this is a topic of conversation in so many blogs and webinars, et cetera, et cetera. My experience with senescence and literature is there's a cut point at about 15 hours that will improve metabolic health, may impact senescent cells to some degree. I personally use a 3-day fast on my patients, or I'll use fasting mimicking diets at 5 days where they still get some caloric or calories and they still have some food, but they do enter certain states that will create that cycle or start that cycle of cell senescent death.
So that fasting is the lack of nutrients that kills them, or is it something else, or do we know?
I don't think we know. I think senescent cells do not like a ketotic state, but in simple terms, when I speak to my patients, that we're basically starving out those senescent cells. They succumb to that state of, it's not starvation, but that state of fasting where they can no longer survive.
Gotcha. And you said you do a 3-day fast. So you actually not eating anything for 3 days, just water, or what do you do?
So, my patients can do, we do water fasts, 3-day water fasts. And you should do it under physician supervision, in my opinion, because we can have some concern about electrolyte imbalances. And if there's any blood sugar issues or glucose issues and diabetes, we certainly need that medical management and intervention. But even healthy patients, they can become dehydrated. They don't drink enough water. They become hyponatremic. The longer you fast, obviously, the longer we can run into those issues. We can develop those issues. But a 3-day fast is pretty safe. And in the science and the physiology in the human body shows that that inflammation really starts to drop off after about 3 days. And the same thing in one of the most studied diets is the 5-day fasting mimicking diet that has been shown to decrease inflammation dramatically on day 5, improve, cholesterol profile, metabolic health, and all the things that we see that improve when we wipe out a population of senescent cells. Then we can come back and we want to start up regulating mitochondria with NAD. If you want to do NAD protocols, you want to use the nicotinamide riboside, whatever. There is some benefit, I believe, to some of the oral supplementation that improves NAD in the body. As we age, our levels of NAD, which is a fundamental substance, we'll call it that, in mitochondria, that mitochondria need to create or produce ATP and produce and maintain cell health and mitochondrial health. At age 60, we have about half the NAD in our bodies that we did when we were 20. And one of the things that is overlooked, in my opinion, is there's an enzyme in the body. As we age, naturally we increase this enzyme called a CD38 enzyme that just wipes out NAD. So and NAD is, to start a protocol, whether it be sub-Q or you hang IVs in your practice, you want to control that CD38 enzyme, because as fast as you give NAD, you're going to be destroying it because of the CD38 enzyme. So to control that CD38 enzyme, one of the natural flavonoids is quercetin. Quercetin works also. These are natural flavonoids that are found in, our cruciferous vegetables, but in supplement form, they have been very integral in decreasing that CD38 enzyme. That's when I'll start, after I wipe out senescent cells, give them quercetin, give them the quercetin. They have it on board already. And that's when I'll give NAD. That's when you get your most benefit, your bang for your buck.
Yeah, if you're just chewing it up and you're like doing these long IVs, it's like, okay, you're just fighting it. Yeah, and it's interesting with the flavonoids. I don't know if you do a lot of genetics. On my genetics, it's like every answer was flavonoids. It's like, okay, you got a weakness in this, this gene, flavonoid. I'm like, oh my gosh, yeah.
But they're potent, and they have a lot of, they have a lot of mechanisms of action in longevity. Certainly, if we took all the science that we've been talking about for the last hour or so on senolytics, and we just look at the blue zones and how, the best longevity on this earth are driven by genetics, are driven by social networks, are driven by exercise, daily exercise, and nutrition, what we put in our bodies every day. So
because I think there's a misnomer. Everyone thinks that genetics determine the person, right? And that's my knock on these genetic tests. Is like, oh my gosh, I'm going to get this. But you get identical twins, and this person has this environment and has this type of lifestyle. This person totally opposite, totally different. So what is it? About 80% is, basically malleable to lifestyle, nutrition, environmental factors, where your genes are, okay, what the hand you're given, but it's what you do with it. And you can turn them on, you can turn them off, and that's, I think, the key, right?
Those studies are wonderful. I always refer to a Finnish study that looked at identical twins and different lifestyles and compared telomere length actually over a lifetime, and compared their lifestyle with stress and what they have endured, if you will, in terms of that allostatic load, and how they've focused or not focused on healthy lifestyle. And you see shortened telomeres in the identical twin that did not take care of himself versus the identical twin that lived a very healthy lifestyle with exercise, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. So your genes aren't your destiny. People freak out. They have a ApoA4 gene. Oh my God, I'm gonna get Alzheimer's. But there's so many things that you can do now, to basically prevent those things. But with the mitochondria, have you done 5-amino-1-MQ? Just curious. It's hard to get, and I don't know if you can get it nowadays, but
I do not. No, I don't use a lot of mitochondrial peptides.
Gotcha. And do you like any of the brain peptides, cerebral lysin, CMAX, C-Link? Do you like those?
Well, one of the areas of interest I have in my practice is chronic inflammatory response syndrome, which is a innate immune system imbalance, we'll call it, where our innate immune system, which our first responder, kind of like that ancient and part of the immune system that's, responds real quick to try and knock out a virus or a bacteria, but never gets handed off to the rest of the immune system and shuts the whole
You just love taking the easy patient.
Inflammatory
Those are tough patients. Yeah.
So getting to those senolytics or neurotropes, we've created a small database and followed some patients with some neuro testing, cognitive testing, short-term memory, executive function, et cetera. And we get a baseline because of what I just described is a systemic inflammation, but we know that that same inflammation is also ongoing in the brain. They have neuroglial inflammation, so they start losing memory, they start losing their ability to function in their livelihood. So we're using a neuropeptide called the hexa, which that is through the mechanism of hepatic growth factor, we have the ability to increase BDNF, a brain-derived neurotrophic factor. And everyone knows that that is basically miracle growth for neurons. And we know we can grow neurons now. We can heal the brain and decrease that inflammation. And anecdotally, in this small database, we've had some very significant success. And I believe it's anti-inflammatory, not just the BDNF, that shuts down an inflammation. And within 30 days, we see their short-term memory improve. It's part of a protocol that we use for our SIRS patients, in addition to.
Yeah, there's the hexa.
Hexa. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
great studies on Alzheimer's, and it's analog of angiotensin 2A. Angiotensin is amazing. ACTH, I mean, they make so many things. There's a number of trials with it coming out, and it's amazing. Like all these trials, I'm like, okay, when are they gonna finish?
I mean, there's a lot of FDA trials, and it's always a moving target. I believe that the FDA is not fond of cerebral lysine currently, but there's probably more studies on that as
in 35 countries, no side effects, and they made it a biologic. So you can't do it as an injection anymore, but you can get it orally now, which actually EEG study shows it absorbs, and one capsule is equal to about 2 cc's.
Well, I think that's one of the promising new developments in peptides, where we're moving off the sterile injectables and moving on to oral peptides, intranasal, transdermal peptides that become more and more effective, and we can use them to just to a greater degree in an integrated medicine practice.
Yeah. But let me tell you, we're doing a lot of studies on bioavailability, and you think, just a tiny tripeptide is absorbable, and it's not. Like, they're just throwing everything sublingually and say, oh, it's going to absorb. You don't know. You have to look at the chemistry. We've hired a CRM that basically works with all the big pharma to develop these ways to make these things absorb. And when you look at, big pharma's been trying to do it for 20 years, right? Everything's exponentially getting better and better at it, but it's a lot tougher than, putting something in a wafer and putting it sublingual.
We have so many disease processes that have just a paucity of therapeutic success.
Oh.
So we look at TBI, for example, or post-concussion syndrome in the chronic state. And I think there's probably some significant effective therapies in peptides. And one of the products that I work with right now that we're looking at treating TBI, where we have hypoxia in the brain, et cetera. And the current therapies just fall so short. And
go home and die.
There's a lot of TBI researchers out there that are all ears looking for just a therapy that has the promise to affect an improvement on chronic TBI or post-concussion. The players coming out of professional ball, military, et cetera, that really need to improve those therapies.
Yeah, and it's not just the football player. I was at a stem cell conference, and it was actually NIH did a study with SPECT scans. They could tell what position the football player played by where his brain damage, but it's reversible.
Yeah.
And exome stem cells, peptides, and I know you've been working with powdered oxygen.
There is a product that is under study right now. We're doing research at in various settings that have been showing more and more efficacy to increase oxygen levels in tissue with a product that actually has benefit by oral ingestion. If you think about the possibilities of being able to drink oxygen and oxygenate tissue, it is effectively and in various settings, acute and chronic settings, the potential is enormous. And the potential benefit after we get these studies underway in human studies, et cetera, everything from just sports performance to traumatic brain injury to wound healing, et cetera, and even
diabetic foot ulcers. I mean, you can save limbs.
Yes, yeah. The product's been around 9 years, been studied for quite a while. It's ready we're really getting into more and more human studies that are going to have a huge impact on a lot of global humanity. The fact is, if you can oxygenate tissue in a world that has a shortage of options such as blood, to be able to resuscitate a injured injured body with powdered oxygen, it's a when those studies are complete and they come to fruition, I think we're going to see a huge impact on those issues where we have those lack of blood supply in the world, for example.
Yeah.
So that's one of the profound ones that I think of.
No, it's incredible because a couple of things. One, you need blood supply there, and then two, you need the lungs working. So you need, like, what about COPD patients? Heck, they can get off their oxygen and just drink it. That's pretty amazing. Or altitude, being at altitude.
Hypoxia, sarcopenia. There's the impact long term of hypoxia on the body is in COPD. COPD is long term.
My God, my head's just spinning. I'm thinking of all these different things. That's very cool. Because I was like, how the heck? Okay, because when you under tremendous pressure, you make it a liquid, but how the heck do you make it a powder? Yeah, well, leave that to the patent. But that's awesome. It's exciting.
It's very exciting. And if we think about applications in regenerative medicine and even longevity, if we have the ability to improve mitochondrial efficiency, in the future, at some point in time, I see it even playing a role as a senolytic or longevity to improve stem cell health. If we put a injured athlete in hyperbaric, as you know, we accelerate healing in acute injury because of increased oxygen.
Yeah, and I think there's going to be secondary pathway, like, okay, then it makes nitric oxide, all the things it does, and I think it's going to be like neurotrophic effect, where you have more oxygen, you have healthier tissues, which stimulate good genes, where I think as you get hypoxia, that's when all inflammation and bad stuff gets secreted, right? Interesting. Yeah, love to hear more about that. So, kind of in summary, what peptides do you like?
Certainly a large part of my practice is aesthetics, regenerative aesthetics.
Mention I'm on the cutting edge of all these aesthetics and like new FDA approved, but they're from like Italy. These threads, I got some. I'm such a whip, but they're so painless. Just doing. Everyone is. I remember they were clamoring to get at you, like, treat me. I mean, So he's an artist as well, really, with face and I was amazed you can pick out like exactly what someone needs. It was very interesting. Like I don't have that sense, but and just always looking for new therapies as well.
Yeah, the applications of peptides and aesthetics have actually have been around quite a long time, and we kind of repurpose them a little bit into hair restoration. Doing hair restoration for quite a few years, and we just dig into the science of the thymosins, for example, GHK, BPC, all of them collectively can repair the scalp as an anti-inflammatory, increasing subcutaneous fat with TB4, activating stem cells, improving their migration down to the hair follicle bulb, and moving a hair follicle into an anagen phase and starting hair growth again. So peptides are key to aesthetics, just starting in the scalp. The GHK has been around since 1970 and studied endlessly for as a topical cosmetic. And if you look at it as a potent, it can potentially be as a systemic peptide, not just for the things we mentioned before, but all those all those mechanisms of GHK. Yeah, they also work on the stem cell, the epithelial stem cell, the fibroblast. So it makes sense to apply it topically. For sure, it works, but why not systemically if we have a decrease, a successive decrease in our GHK as we age.
Well, I'm in LA, so you could just have beautiful outside, but if you're inside, it's just deteriorating. They don't care. It's like, but I'm telling you, every time I see you, your hair, you have more and more hair.
I've never done a not one step. This is my hair. Thank God I'm blessed. But yeah, the hair restoration is a lot of fun. The thymosins are integral in aesthetics in regenerative aesthetics practice, and the not only as from a topical application, but we know that the ability to accelerate healing is a systemic phenomenon. And so we can use peptides. There is evidence that using systemic peptides such as TB4 or even BPC or an oral BPC 157 are very effective in restoring or accelerating that healthy injury that we use in aesthetics to restore skin and restore tissue to a more youthful state.
Nice. So you take, I love that. You take the application. I think that's what's lacking so much in medicine is doctors learn this, but they don't take this and apply it over here,
Medications all the time.
And everyone's in their own little thing. You got the gastroenterologist, you got the cardiologist, you got the neurologist. And so patients go to all these different things and it's like, come in with, 22 diagnoses. And I'm like, what do you think? It's more likely you have 22 separate diagnoses that aren't related, or there's one thing underlying, but I love that. Any new therapies on the horizon? I love this powdered oxygen.
I think we're going to be looking at, one of the areas in regenerative medicine, obviously, are biologics. And whether we use decellularized growth factors that used to be called exosomes, stem cells, there's always a moving target as to their application and how you can use them and when you can use them. But more and more of those products are being reinvented, if you will, or redesigned as topicals. So looking at combining, for example, in wound care, as you mentioned before, in diabetics, but just in aesthetics, the post-procedure healing time is of extremely key to your success. And if we can combine a topical biologic with something like a powdered oxygen that supplies that wound, that healing with oxygen and those growth factors and all the things we need to accelerate the healing without dampening down that inflammation too much, because we want to call on those stem cells naturally to come in and heal. And I think we can find that balance and accelerate that healing and affect a great outcome. Taming those stem cells with the peptides in addition that tell that stem cell to go down that path of healthy healing, laying down the right collagen 3 and collagen 1, and not going off and creating scar tissue. So for me, that's a very exciting area of development going forward over the next 6 to 12 months.
Yeah. And I think with peptides are so synergistic with something, but especially, stem cells. And I've given a lot of talks on the synergy, even with the latest virus that's out. I don't want to say it because with the COVID whatever, pig Latin, but is that stem cells are reversing that, especially added with peptides. And, the stem cells will secrete peptides, whether it needs to be antimicrobial peptides or actually thymosins, and then all the thymosins and BPC stimulate the stem cells. So they're really a nice combo. And I think you get, 1+1 = 5 type thing when you use them together. And
There's wonderful synergies there that need to be explored and created into products and utilized in all these areas we just mentioned.
yeah, I just worry the FDA is so, they're really the enforcement arm of big pharma. But, if you have something that's exceedingly totally safe and works, yeah, they're probably going to try to take it away. But anyways, this has been fascinating. I just love all the stuff you're doing and just your passion. And I've seen you work in person and lecture, and I appreciate your basically generosity and sharing everything that you do. And yeah, just seeing everyone huddled around you, and there's no shortage of free models for you. But yeah, so I mean, you're just doing great work. Keep it up. And again, all the mastermind conferences you have, please keep them up. I just learn so much and just meet so many interesting people that are very cool, but a little nerdy side, and
So far, we've been very successful. Our next one's going to be the end of February, and then we're going to have just the all things regenerative medicine coming up in May. So we already have people signed up, and we're excited for them to just put on the next conference.
nice. And afterward, you get some beautiful wines at Laconda. Do you have any more spots in your wine club?
There are some spots left. Just have to call the main number. My winemaker will set you up, because the wines speak for themselves. You've been to the winemakers dinner at Laconda conference, and I think that's certainly the big draws. Everybody says when they leave the conference, it's like, I learned a lot, and I felt like I was on a mini vacation. Just got to relax.
A little touch of paradise. And you obviously use your power of geekiness to the wines too, and the scientific. And I could just see you in there, like, analyzing to get that ultimate wine, and it comes through. But again, you're just doing some great things for people. And and I think some people that see you, like, they probably don't realize, hey, I'm going to live 10 years longer and not in a nursing home. What's that worth?
Right.
What is it now? 80% of the money is spent in the last year of someone's life, and they're just sitting there in a nursing home or ICU at the time, coming in and out, a liver transplant, and you can prevent that.
We endeavor to, and
Yeah. So
endeavor to make sure that our patients don't end up in those nursing homes prematurely.
yeah, so you are godsend to so many people, and I thank you. I'm proud to say you're a colleague and friend, and thank you for all that you do.
Thank you, Ken. Thank you for having me today. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you. I know you're just so busy running around, so I do really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us on the Peptides and Longevity podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, share, and leave a review. It helps us reach more listeners passionate about optimizing their health. For more insights, resources, and updates, visit our website at www.holtorfmed.com. Together, let's embrace a future of health and vitality. Until next time, stay inspired and keep thriving.